is going on, everybody? Welcome to a special edition of the Beyond the Junkyard podcast. I am Junkyard James, your host, and I'm by myself doing a quick reaction of AEW's Grand Slam Australia event that was on TV Saturday, the 15th of February. Overall, great review. For me, I thought it was a great show. I stayed up. I took a nap Saturday afternoon to ensure that I would be able to watch the show as it aired for the first time. It obviously didn't air live. It aired on a long TV delay. And so I was trying to avoid social media at all possible because I knew that there was a possibility of spoilers being shown, and I didn't see a whole lot, but I saw a few stragglers out there of people trying to spoil parts of the show, but nothing major. I still was interested. I still was intrigued. It was a very good show. My overall review, before I get into some of the main things, is I thought it was an A show, probably a 9 out of 10. It wasn't perfect. It had some moments of where it was a little dull, but at the overall picture of the show, I think it was a success. I think the Australian crowd was awesome, and that AEW really needs to tap in to the potential to run AEW overseas and the international markets a lot more. Once or twice a year seems reasonable, but I think we could go a couple more times, and I know it's a big cost to the business to go overseas, but the market there is just so hungry for AEW, and we saw that last night with the Australian crowd. They were eating up Ospreay and Omega. They sung the entire song Metalingus for Adam Copeland, or Cope. It was just a great show to watch, and watching from my couch to the TV, the crowd seemed great. I'm sure it was a great environment to be a part of. I would love to see AEW host a show in Japan that's not necessarily connected to New Japan, as well as other areas in overseas in the international markets. But that's for another episode to discuss that. Today we're discussing Grand Slam Australia. And before we get into it, I'd like to thank our affiliate partners or partnered with Dubby Energy. They're trying to change the game with their no BS energy, trying to take down the big guns of big energy. And so go to dubby.gg, buy some of their energy powders. All you do is you scoop it like you would protein powder into water, shake it up. You got yourself some energy without all of the BS chemicals that some of the other energy brands may have. Dubby.gg. In the discount code box at checkout, type in Beyond the Yard, get 10% off, help support the podcast. Same thing with StubHub. Link will be in the description box for this episode. Click the link, go to StubHub. Using that link, any purchase you make helps supports the podcast. We do get a bit of a commission off the link if you use our link. And then lastly, WWE Shop. If you've seen the last couple episodes of the live stream, we've been playing the promo video from last year. But go to WWE Shop. We're heading towards WrestleMania. There's some new merch that is out there. Alexa Bliss has a new shirt, I know. Maybe you're a fan of her and want to get her new shirt. Click the link in the description box and support the podcast that way as well. Let's get going. We start off with Omega and Ospreay versus the Don Callis family, and this, I think, was match of the night. For me, it was hot. The crowd was great. Everybody was interested, and I understand why, business-wise, Omega and Ospreay versus Don Callis family started the show. You got this, supposedly, I don't know if it was. We'll have to wait and see when the numbers come out. You get this big fan interaction transitioning from All-Star Dunk Contest coverage to AEW, and now you're going to use this opportunity to show the best of your company right at the beginning. And it's Ospreay and Omega versus the Don Callis family, and a match that went about 21 minutes, a little longer, and I think it was match of the night. The rest of the show had a very hard time following up with it, but each match, I felt like every match on the card did what it needed to do, and in some cases exceeded what they needed to do to progress the storyline. Mercedes Moné and Harley Cameron, can we stop with the idea that Mercedes Moné is not a good wrestler, that she cannot put on a good match? Because it just seems like time after time after time, when she's in an AEW ring, she's putting on absolute amazing matches. They may not be 5-star classics, but this match with Harley Cameron, like Harley Cameron's had maybe 12 matches in her career. This should not have been as good as it was. I should not have been invested in this match. The part of the show where Harley Cameron pops up from at the ring apron and she resurrects the Mercedes Moné puppet, and that gave me goosebumps, like legitimate goosebumps. I popped for that moment. The presentation was great. Mercedes Moné was great. This was Harley Cameron's best match of her career. Her best match of the career. And like, Harley Cameron has just the most potential for me in AEW to do really good things. She's just so talented in everything she does, and it looks like wrestling may be that next venture that Harley Cameron is just going to exceed at. And I think she has all the potential in the world. Easily right now the first in line. If it was December right now, and we had our end of the year review show that we always do with the Slap and Meat Wrestling Boys, Harley Cameron would be my most improved wrestler of 2025 as it stands right now. She's just so great. And I don't want to break down every match. And we have the Brisbane Bomb match. Again, it fulfilled what it needed to do. Copeland looked really good. Jay White looked really good. The Death Riders had to, get help from Marina Shafir and Wheeler Yuta to win. It helps progress the story for Cope and Moxley at Revolution in a few weeks. I'm assuming maybe Jay White will have a match with Wheeler Yuta at some point, because it seems like those are the two that are feuding. And then we'll see what happens with the rest of the Death Riders in that story. Okada and Buddy, I like that match. Wasn't a fan of Okada retaining. I wanted Buddy to win. But it was obvious that as we saw, Harley Cameron loses, Buddy Matthews lost, that this pay-per-view or pay-per-view show, or whatever you want to call it, this episode of Collision was meant for Toni Storm to get the big pop at the end of the show. I think that's what it saw. That Buddy Matthews looked really good in his home country. Harley Cameron looked really good in her home country. But Toni Storm was going to be the one to get the pop at the end of the show in her home country. And it was a good match. And it really was a 15-minute match. Mariah May looked good. I don't think she looks bad in this loss. It was kind of a simple roll-up that Toni Storm won the match by. Mariah May hits Storm Zero, Toni Storm's own finisher. Toni Storm is able to roll out of the way and get the roll-up victory over Mariah May. It was a fun match, and now Toni Storm is champion again as we lead in to the next segment. And it wouldn't shock me if at Revolution Mariah May gets her rematch. And we see Toni Storm's first title defense of her 4th title reign in Los Angeles. It wouldn't shock me. But it also wouldn't shock me if AEW introduces a new character or throws another person towards Toni Storm. We'll have to see where it leads on Wednesday. And just overall, the show was great. I'd give it a 9 out of 10. And I'm looking at cage match, and again, a lot of the WWE marks hate cage match because most of the time you get real, honest opinion from actual wrestling fans on cage match. The lowest rating this show got was a 6. The highest, obviously, was a 10. Its current average is an 8.47. I give it a 9, so I'm slightly higher than the average. But here's some comments, and I love this show because people are allowed to give their opinion in the forum of each individual show. This was written, this person gave it a 7.0 out of 10. For a special event aired on free television, it was fine. Not a single bad match and a huge moment to close the night. As expected, AEW shines the brightest when it leans heavily into pure wrestling and steers clear of overcomplicated storytelling, which is exactly what they did here, though maybe unmemorable as it may seem, this is their strength. A fantastic show with an incredible opener and the rest of the card holding up more than well enough. And this is exactly kind of how I feel. I didn't write this comment, by the way. This is kind of how I feel. And so I want to break away from the matches in and of itself and talk about just the social media reaction leading into this show and how it seems like AEW is on the rise, that it's doing something well because the WWE marks the Jim Cornette E-drones, the corny Cornette E-drones are finding the smallest things to complain about. A report came out late, I guess it was Friday night, early Saturday morning, as they're getting ready to tape the show, because it was nighttime in Australia because of the time difference, that AEW was using a smaller ring, and they weren't using the steel stairs. And there was a supposed report, and I can't find out who leaked this or who said this to begin with. I was sent it from a Facebook post with no link to any real thing, but all it says is that the report is alleging that Kyle Fletcher had to call one of his buddies for AEW to use an indie ring for the show, because of the AEW equipment was not there in time. And they're making a big deal out of it. And so we tune in, and I was skeptical. I think this is blah blah blah. The ring was smaller. So they're right. The report is right. The ring was smaller. It was a 16 by 16 ring instead of the normal 20 by 20 ring. They didn't have the steel steps. They had what looked to be kind of like a step ladder type of rig that they rigged up for the wrestlers to get into the ring. But they're making this a big deal as if this is the downfall of AEW because they had to use a smaller ring. And so this is what I put on social media. This is what I had to say about that. Yes, the ring is smaller. The typical steel stairs aren't there. To be honest, I don't fucking care. This tag match, I typed this during the Kenny Omega match to start the show. The tag match has been really good. I'm sure the rest of the card will be too. The crowd is hot. As a fan, that's all I fucking care about. Give me good wrestling. Hashtag AEW Grand Slam. This is what I care about. This is what I've been saying. Is these WWE E-drones have to find something. They have to dig deep to find something wrong with AEW. Because they can't just sit back and watch AEW produce really good wrestling. They can't sit back and be like, wow, this is something that people enjoy. They don't like storytelling. They don't like 5-year stories that never end and you just add characters and it makes it seem like no other story is bigger, even though this story's gone stale and you don't really get the reaction that you used to get. I'm referring to the bloodline here. that you pulled Jey Uso out of that storyline, and he's the biggest thing. But don't worry, he gets his moment of time, and eventually he'll be thrown right back into the era of the bloodline, because the bloodline's all that matters in WWE. Oh, there's people that actually like that wrestling's in the forefront and not in the background, and that you can tell a story, but it's not the most important thing. That what I pay to see is the wrestling in the ring, not the story being told outside of the ring. That you can have they don't seem to think that there's a market for that, because they live in this bubble where WWE has brainwashed them to think that if you don't have a good story, you can't have a good match. But when you step out of that zone and you see that you don't necessarily have to have a story that is super compelling to get people to watch wrestling, that wrestling fans will watch wrestling. You could bring two people they don't even know, put them in a ring, have them fight. Commentary tells that they've had issues in the past, but you don't have to really go dive deep into why. And wrestling fans will tune in. They do it on the indie scenes, week in and week out, where local homegrown talent number one stays and fights incoming traveling talent from out of the state. The storyline's usually like, you're the hometown boy, but I'm going to show you that we do it better in this other place. And people will pay to watch it. There's no major story. There's no grand theatrical vignette for a lot of these local indie events. Half the time, if they do any promo, it's recorded on their iPhone, poorly edited, put on social media to promote the show. But there's no grand theatrics. And people tune in and fill up venues week in and week out. Because at the end of the day, they care about what goes on in the ring. And as a fan, I don't think it matters if the ring is smaller, if the steps are the correct for what's supposed to be on TV. I think that as long as they left happy, that they felt like they got their money's worth, and the crowd ate it up, I don't think the crowd really gave a shit. Will Ospreay put on social media was the most fun he has had wrestling in his entire life. So he obviously didn't care that it was a smaller ring. And so this is a nothing burger. This is just something else for the people who hate AEW. And as much as they say they wanted to succeed, in the back of their mind, they really don't. They really do not want AEW to succeed. They really don't want somebody competing against WWE. This is just something else that they can use to try and make it sound like AEW is just some backyard wrestling promotion, when it is not. This is the third largest gate in the company's history, behind the two All-Ins. They made some really good money on this show. And maybe they mistimed shipping the ring. Who knows? Stuff like this happens. Or it could have been they shipped it out. There was problems getting it there. Because, stuff like that happens. Delays happen. But you can't stop the show because of a delay. So stuff like that happens all the time. Don't make it seem like Tony Khan is incompetent. You don't get to where he's got unless you have some form of competency. You don't get to run an English Premier League team unless you have some form of competency. Your analytics program isn't used by multiple sporting programs to get data to help them train better unless you have some form of competency. Tony Khan is not some idiot. He is really competent. He's really smart, and he knows what he's doing. But sometimes things happen. Delays happen in shipping all the time. How many times has FedEx or UPS told you your package was going to be there on Monday and you don't get it till Thursday because there was a delay somewhere in the line? That stuff happens. This is just another thing for the WWE corny cornet E-drones to bitch about, and it's a nothing burger. And in a couple weeks for Revolution, they'll find something else that's very small. That doesn't mean anything in the long run. Just because they have to find something to complain about. Because at the end of the day, here's what I believe. I believe there's a craving for them to like AEW because they do put on really good wrestling, but they're so convinced that if they show an ounce of support to AEW, that they will be ridiculed by the people that are their audience. That they just continue to hate on it, even though they outside of the social media realm, outside of the podcast, outside of everything, they can sit down and say they put on really good wrestling. But they have to keep this persona up. I keep it real. When WWE does something good, I'm going to tell you that they do something good. I don't watch it a whole lot, so I'm not going to comment a lot on it. AEW had a good show this week. They had a good show on Wednesday with Dynamite. They had a good show last night with Grand Slam. And it seems like the company's in the right direction, leading into Revolution. We're a couple weeks away. We got some really big matches that are going to take place in LA with what I assume would be the return of the Young Bucks. They dropped the New Japan tag titles, the IWGP Tag Team Championships. So my assumption is in some way, shape, or form, we might see the Young Bucks return to AEW. And it seems like AEW is in the point of the year where they're on the up and up. And these WWE E-Drone, AEW haters cannot stand that. They can't stand to see that AEW might actually be competent in what they're doing. I put this on social media also. I said I find it funny that when AEW is at its best, the haters have to come out and hate even harder. But when they're in a slump, they're quiet. If you don't enjoy it being AEW, fine, but allow AEW fans to enjoy AEW. That's all we're asking. You don't have to like it. I'm not here to persuade you to like it. I would love if you would tune in and give it a shot. I think a lot of these people haven't watched an episode of AEW. They just hate it because it's cool to hate it. It brings me into this point. They hate it because they love to hate it. Imagine, it seems like these WWE fans want AEW to be a carbon copy of WWE. That they have to have the same theatrics, they have to have the same this, they have to have the same production. You can't do anything different or else it's bad. But from a business perspective, and I've talked about this before, but let me give you a different viewpoint of what I'm trying to say. From a business perspective, if you're entering a market that is dominated by one major company, and for the wrestling industry, you have to admit, for the longest time, and even now, WWE has controlled the wrestling industry. So when you're coming into the wrestling industry, having to put on a product to be an alternative to this product that has dominated the market, you can't get into the market by copying everything that company does, because you won't be able to provide value long term for your company if you're just a carbon copy of the main person. Let me put it in another way. So in the South, there's three major, and I'll use three, there might be more. There's three major chicken finger spots that their thing is chicken fingers and fries. We have Zaxby's, and Zaxby's is pretty good. I like Zaxby's. They do really, they're really good at what they do. They have chicken fingers, fries, coleslaw. They do chicken wings and some other different things. They have some different things like fried cheese bites and fried pickles, but their main thing is chicken fingers, fries, and their Zaxby sauce. The reason they add those other things, the chicken wings, the fried pickles, the fried cheese bites, the milkshakes that they just brought back, they do the quesadillas now, and and sometimes they do like they have like egg rolls and things. The reason they do that is because they're competing against Raising Cane's chicken fingers. And what Raising Cane's does is really easy. Chicken fingers, fries, cane sauce, toast. That's all they do. You can get it on a sandwich, but there's nothing. You can't get anything other than chicken fingers and fries at Cane's. And Cane's, they're real simple. We're going to do what we do best, and we're going to do it best. We're going to focus only on that. We're not going to give you a wide variety of stuff because we want you to get what we're best at, which is our chicken fingers and fries, and load up on our cane sauce. And so Zaxby's has to, yes, they want to focus on the chicken fingers and fries, but they also have to provide additional value to get you to buy them instead of Cane's. Oh, and there's a third one that's really focused on chicken fingers and chicken wings and fries. That's Dave's Hot Chicken. Well, what's their claim to fame? Why are they different? Well, it's because they don't just do regular chicken fingers and fries. They do Nashville Hot Chicken fingers and fries. And so if you like Nashville Hot Chicken, maybe you're more prone to go to Dave's. The point of the matter is if all three of them just sold chicken fingers and fries, one would be known as the best and will take all of the business. But the other two, in my opinion, that would be Cane's. I think Cane's does chicken fingers and fries better than Zaxby's and better, and you can't really say Dave's does it because they don't have a plain chicken finger and fry that I know of. So the reason Dave's Hot Chicken focuses on Nashville Hot Chicken is because they know they wouldn't do regular chicken fingers and fries better than Cane's, or that people perceive that Cane's is the best. And so they do Nashville Hot Chicken, and that'll bring people to them because that's their marketing point. Zaxby's does chicken wings. They do all of the other special menu items because they know that they don't do chicken fingers and fries better, or at least in the perception of people, the majority, they don't do it better than Cane's. And so they put all this other stuff to do extra value added things. So if AEW were to be a carbon copy of WWE, WWE would literally just eat AEW alive. AEW has to be different. It's business. For these people say they love to talk about business. Well, it's business. There's a business decision why AEW does things differently than AEW. Because if you do the same thing, you're never going to make strides at growing the business, growing your company. If you do the same thing, why would Warner Brothers want to put a carbon copy of WWE on television? Why would they want to put themselves through the ridicule of saying, oh, this is just a Wish.com version of WWE? That's why they show they present the product differently. Where WWE is more storytelling in the foreground and wrestling as a cog to the story, AEW, the story is the cog to the match. In WWE, the match leads you to the story. In AEW, the story leads you to the match. They flipped it. And while WWE may be more popular, I'll give you that. AEW is probably not as popular, but it has a market. And as long as they keep the people in that market satisfied, I think people will still tune in, will still give their money, will still buy Max, and AEW will be around for a very long time. Dave's Hot Chicken's probably not as popular as Raising Cane's. But Dave's Hot Chicken will stay in business and will continue to grow because it produces something that there are people who may, like, from time to time, regular chicken fingers and fries, it just doesn't hit. Sometimes you want to spice it up a little bit. There's Dave's. There's Zaxby's. And so Dave's might be the most popular. Or I'm sorry, Raising Cane's may be the most popular. It may have the most street cred on social media. But Zaxby's is an alternative. Dave's Hot Chicken is an alternative. And smaller markets, like I think a PDQ still exists. They're not competing with Cane's. But PDQ's still there in smaller areas because it's an alternative. And it'll be very profitable in the markets that they decide to stay in. There's one more that I don't particularly like, but they have a couple in my area. I can't think of the name because I don't eat it all the time. But I've had it a few times. They're in the market too. They're not looking to take over Cane's. They're just an alternative. Hey, we have this. This is our claim to fame. Try us out. AEW cannot grow. They cannot be an alternative if they do the same as WWE. If they're a carbon copy. And so, listen, it's not for everyone. And they never said that it was for everyone. And so it just frustrates me. And I get said that I'm defending everything Tony Khan does. Well, not necessarily. I criticize Tony Khan. I've criticized the marketing of Grand Slam for a while now. Ever since they started showing Revolution banners and All In banners, but completely forgetting to mention Australia and until the last couple weeks. Like, I called them out on that. I've called Tony Khan out for a while ago. You can check my TikTok. I was watching old TikToks of mine where I was calling Tony Khan out for not using the women correctly. They have fixed that issue. So there's nothing on that point that I have to complain about anymore. But I complained about the marketing. I complain about advertising. I complain about outpricing your markets. I complain a lot about AEW for things that I can see. But I'm not going to step behind the curtain where I'm not there and ridicule them for something that could have just been a delay logistically. I'm not going to blame Tony Khan for his equipment not showing up on time until a report comes out that proves that it was Tony Khan's fault. This simply could have been a logistical delay where something happened and it caused, I'm assuming they took it by boat. The boat was delayed at some form. And it's just difficult for me to see how people just have the energy to continue doing this. The show is great. Meanwhile, and I didn't watch the show, so I'm not going to ridicule the show because I didn't watch it. I don't know how good or how bad it was. I heard it was a good show, but I can't confirm nor deny because I didn't watch it. But I do know that Eddie Thorpe beat Trick Williams. And I do see on Cage Match, it was the worst rated match of the night. And I put this on social media. Again, I didn't watch the match. I don't really give a shit long term. But I know that Trick Williams is a star. I know that Trick Williams should be treated better than this. And by having him lose a strap match to Eddie Thorpe is quite wild. I put WWE has a star in Trick Williams, and they won't pull the plug on him. What makes you think Ricky Starks, Miro, or anyone else they bring in will be any different? They aren't better than Trick. In AEW, Trick Williams would be a star. That's all I said about Vengeance Day. I didn't watch the show, so I'm not going to comment on how the show went. It seemed to be perceived well by the people on Cage Match, has an average rating of 8.27, so I'm sure it was a really good show. My brother was in the crowd. He said it was the best show he's ever been to. I'm just saying, Trick Williams should not be losing matches to Eddie Thorpe. In my opinion, Trick Williams should be in the main roster by now. That's my only complaint about Vengeance Day, is that Trick Williams lost. But, it seems like the show was perceived well. I haven't watched it. Probably won't watch it. I remember a couple years ago I went to a Vengeance Day when it was in Charlotte, and it was a good show, so I'm assuming it would be a good show. I just don't really care enough to watch it. I don't know, man. It's infuriating. As a fan of AEW, week in and week out, the show gets ridiculed for the smallest things. And I kind of threw that Trick Williams thing in there. Because that's what the AEW haters do. Those that hate AEW is they'll talk really good about the stuff that they love, and then they'll just hit that quick jab. And so I'm just throwing it right back at them. I really don't care about it. I think Trick Williams would be a star in AEW. I think he should be booked better in WWE. But at the end of the day, I don't watch the product, so it doesn't affect me. I just want to... That's exactly what they do, is they talk about everything that's good about the product that they love, and then they hit that quick jab on the stuff that they hate. That's really kind of seemingly out of nowhere, and so I'm just throwing it right back at them. At the end of the day, let me tell you what this show is, and this is where I'll end it. And then we'll move in, and then next Thursday, me and K-Dog will get back on this show, and we'll talk more about AEW and how good it is and where it's building up towards Revolution. And some other things. What was AEW Grand Slam? If I had to compare it to something, this was nothing more than the WWE version of what they've had recently with Saturday Night Main Event. It was a TV program meant to be a stopgap between one pay-per-view to the next pay-per-view so that they can have a way to either stop a storyline or continue a storyline. Because of Grand Slam Australia, Omega now fights Takeshita for the International Championship at Revolution. Ospreay now fights Fletcher in a steel cage match at Revolution. We no longer... Harley Cameron got an event in her home country. I don't know where it goes, but more than likely, she's not fighting Mercedes Moné at Revolution. When we get the progression of a possible feud, either for the TBS title or for the New Japan Never Strong title, between Mercedes Moné and one of the most over wrestlers in the women's scene and around the world, Momo Watanabe. And the WWE fans be like, who? Who's Momo? Look it up. Momo Watanabe is one of the best women's wrestlers in the world. We might get a match with Mercedes Moné at Revolution. And I guarantee the WWE will be scouting that match, because it seems like everyone Mercedes Moné wrestles ends up in WWE very shortly. That's just a joke, but we get that story built. Moxley has his match with Cope at Revolution, but this was a stopgap to continue the storyline. Okada beats Buddy. Wonder who fights Okada next. We talk about Omega and Takeshita. Actually, it builds into now there's a intercontinental or an international like trio feud where Kenny Omega will be at Revolution, But Wednesday, we have Orange Cassidy fighting Roddy Strong. And then the winner of that match will fight Konosuke Takeshita. And then the winner of that match will be the international champion leading into Revolution. And so we've built, now we have several weeks worth of programming of wrestling to get you to the event, which will more than likely be Konosuke Takeshita versus Kenny Omega, but Konosuke Takeshita has to work for it a little bit more. And Kenny Omega's fresh, and he doesn't have to wrestle in these gauntlet-style matches. Fun stuff. Okada beats Buddy. Hopefully we see the Continental title at Revolution. I don't know where that would lead. Toni Storm retains the belt. I could see at Revolution Mariah May getting a rematch. Like I said earlier, I could see them throwing another woman in the picture. I ultimately think at whatever point, we got to get to All In, because I think All In is Thunder Rosa's moment. And so if it's Toni Storm, I think long term, this is why I wasn't necessarily a fan of them giving Toni Storm the belt here. I would have preferred them to give her the belt at Revolution, because then we could have that 3-month build when Toni Storm versus Thunder Rosa. Now we got to get to the pay-per-view. I don't think they leave the women's world title off the pay-per-view, so I assume you have Toni Storm and Mariah May with a rematch. That would be my safe bet. But I think the ultimate picture is we're getting the Toni Storm Thunder Rosa match that we never got before Thunder Rosa's injury, and Thunder Rosa will win the title again. That's just the way that I see it. But there's so much that's going on. This is just a Saturday night main event, AEW style. It's a themed show on a Saturday to be a stopgap to help continue or start new feuds to lead you to Revolution. That way you're not going from the 28th of December to the 9th of March without having having stories being shifted. That's a long time to not be able to stopgap stories. And so that's all this show was. And it fulfilled what it needed to do. It was never meant to be a pay-per-view, but it was a pay-per-view quality show. 5 really good matches. None of them went less than 12 minutes. They were all really good. The Brisbane Brawl kind of ended anticlimactically with Cope and Jay White being choked out, but that's kind of what the Death Rider shtick is. And so I can't hate on it. I thought it was enjoyable. I thought stories were progressed. And at the end of the day, the fans went home happy. And they're going back to Australia in 2026. And maybe they can market it a little bit better. And I don't know if it'll be a Grand Slam or maybe they get an actual pay-per-view this year. The next year. I don't know what the plan is for Australia. Maybe they can market it better. Maybe they can find a better arena. Maybe they've learned some things about logistics and they know that let's take into account for possible delays and ship it off a little earlier. I don't know what the idea is. But obviously it worked because they're going back. And obviously Warner Bros. Feels good with the show because they keep giving them these big events. And I was talking in a Discord server with some people, and they were like, "Well, what happens in 3 years when Warner Brothers has had enough of this and they had enough of what?" AEW is their top show on Wednesday nights and Saturday nights. Have enough of winning? Have enough of success? Warner Brothers doesn't have a legitimate reason right now to pull the plug on AEW. And you're thinking 3 years down the line that they may? Why don't we think about the ever-foreseeing future where the Janelle Grant case is going on? What happens when she wins that case? What happens to WWE? When Triple H and Brock Lesnar and Nick Khan and Vince McMahon all maybe end up having to serve some form of sentencing because of this case. WWE has its own problems to worry about. As a fan, I don't think we need to delve into any of it. But if you're going to delve into what ifs about the backstage politics of AEW, I'll be happy to jump in on the backstage politics of WWE because they have more than enough to talk about. But I'll end it there. We'll see y'all next Thursday. Hope you enjoyed this show. We'll see you on the live stream. And until next time, enjoy whatever wrestling you like. If you like Raw, watch it Monday. If you like NXT, watch it Tuesday. If you like AEW, watch it Wednesday. We'll see you Thursday. And then we'll continue this conversation in the live stream. Y'all have a good one. Enjoy your weekend. This is Junkyard James. Another episode of the Beyond the Junkyard podcast. We're out.